Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Hello, Gerard. I keep hearing about the vibe coding everywhere lately, but I thought that it's just another buzzword, But when I started getting into depth of this topic, I realized that actually it's something game-changing here, especially if you are in the project management or a product owner field and looking to accelerate your prototyping and feedback cycles. So I started thinking about Agile and how it relates to artificial intelligence and specifically vibe coding, and had the idea that maybe it altogether will help to resurrect Agile, and I will dare to say the word resurrect. But I have a specific video related to vibe coding, what it is, and how to use it, and also a specific video about Agile and artificial intelligence and vibe coding. So I will provide the links under this podcast and video. But currently, appeared that my previous guest Gerard, who you already know, is also into this subject. So we decided to gather together again and unpack what vibe coding really is, how you can practically leverage it into your workflow, and importantly, why it's worth paying attention to. So again, Gerard, welcome back to this podcast and this video. You are my regular guest now. I'm so happy that you are keep coming. And let's not keep our audience waiting. So let's listen from your perspective. What is vibe coding in the first place, and also why there is so much hype recently around it?
Thank you for having me again on your podcast, Aina. I'm glad to be back. What is vibe coding? In general, this is a way of interacting with generative AI tools where you describe the feature you want the software for, and instead of explaining individual algorithms and explaining the code itself, you're explaining how it's supposed to work, and you're allowing generative AI to interpret your prompt and then generate code for it. And in this context, we're talking mostly web apps, but it's not limited to that at all. And rather than specifying individual functions and individual elements, you basically say, make this button green instead of red. And you're saying, oh, I would like to introduce a flow to recover password. Give me a password recovery page. And the AI takes that prompt and it generates the entire code for it. The word vibe coding came from the fact that you're not really doing software engineering, you're kind of playing. So you're kind of checking quote unquote vibes of just producing the software. And this is where that term came from. But it is immensely powerful for prototyping. If you want to visualize or you want to create a prototype of your idea, it is extremely fast to get from zero to a functioning prototype. So this created a lot of hype around, well, can we now replace software developers? Because all I need to do is say, hey, ChatGPT, just generate me some prompts, and then you go to tools like Bold.new, and you basically just put those prompts in, and software quote unquote appears. A lot of hype around it. It is not as easy as it sounds, and everyone on YouTube and other places makes it look so easy. When you start using it, it is not super easy, but still the barrier of entry for people like yourself and myself went down. So there is a lot to be learned from it, and I think it's a tremendously useful tool for project managers. So yeah, this is kind of like a quick introduction to what vibe coding is.
Thank you, Gerard. I think this intro is very useful for people who never heard about it, and also thank you for pointing that it's easy, but not that easy as it might look like in some of the YouTube channels. But I still feel this tool makes my personal life much easier because I'm a person with soft skills, and unfortunately, my hard skills are not that good at soft. So whenever I had some idea of delivering something what I needed to code, I felt terrified because I felt like, oh, I need to become a developer first. So it's going to take me another like at least 3 or more years to be able to code and then to start implementing it. But with vibe coding, definitely it won't take me like hours. I feel like I need still to practice like a few more months, but months are not years. But
Mhm.
you also mentioned that this is going to be very useful for project managers. So, do you
Mhm.
have any specific example, Gerard, or why do you think that?
Yeah, our job as project managers is to work with our teams to deliver software. Let's stay in the software sector. Um, to deliver software based on the requirements that the business owners, the product owners, the product managers specify for us to then deliver, right? The challenge really comes from translating general business requirements into individual software features. This is why we work with software architects, with uh, designers, specifically user interface designers. Um, this is why we typically on web app uh, kind of apps, we have front-end engineers or back-end engineers or full stack engineers, and the entire approach of turning business requirements into, let's say, epics, and then those epics into individual user stories, then breaking down user stories into developer tasks, designer tasks, and so on. This is our day to day, right? The problem comes from the fact that all of this is a lot of work, and the work that needs to be done in a very specific way. And often, if you get incomplete requirements, you have to make some assumptions. Sometimes you have to create some prototypes to work with your product owners to figure out whether those assumptions are correct or not. In the past, you had to develop those prototypes with your team first before you went back to the product owner. You showed them the prototypes, and then they could give you feedback on those prototypes, and then you went and implemented that feedback. But there was still at least a sprint or two, or however long it took to develop the prototype, and that's effort, and that effort is cost, right? So, from a project manager perspective, that's budget that you now
Mm.
burned, but you didn't really deliver the core of your project, because the core is the actual feature or software that is going to go into the market, right? The prototype is a necessary step, but it is not the core what you're delivering. What vibe coding allows us to do is to speed up that process of creating those prototypes. I want to make sure that people understand one thing. At this point in time, I think it's a general consensus to which I subscribe to, that code generated through vibe coding, for the most part, is not ready to be shipped to production environments. There is plenty of little issues, inconsistencies that those tools introduce. There is very little in terms of actual uh, software security, thinking through and sorting out all sorts of problems of this kind. Vibe coding at this point in time in my opinion, should not be used to quote unquote vibe code a solution and immediately push it to production. But for prototyping is amazing. And if anything, it is a tool that I use right now to communicate to my team what is that I want the software to do. Well, not necessarily me personally, but I am representing the product owner or the business unit in front of my team. So if I can take the requirements, put those requirements into the tool and create a prototype, it's much easier to then sit down with the team and say, okay, this part works. This other part doesn't really. There is a conflict. Oh, we are now missing this other thing that we didn't think of. How about we propose this solution or the other solution? And it serves as a starting point for that communication and that review cycle. And it allows us to then generate a list of questions and assumptions that we can go to the product owners or business unit and review it with them to be much more specific about the requirements that we need to deliver on. So the part that we do with vibe coding, it's primarily used for prototyping and communication. We're not using that code to do anything with it. It's kind of discarded, but it still solved that initial problem that I said at the beginning. The time it takes from zero to prototype right now is hours instead of weeks. So that's a tremendous amount of time and money saved.
And I just want to reiterate what you just said, Gerard. You can prototype it, but you cannot push this code to production and ship it to the customers. Because I know that many started thinking, again, after watching a few of the YouTube videos, oh, I don't need a developer right now. I have an idea in my catch, so I can use the vibe coding to prototype my idea, and then I just push it to the customers, and the work is done. But no, especially if you work in financial institutions where the security is involved, the customer personal data protection, etc. We are not developers. We don't know, not even a half, we don't know 90% of things what developers are thinking about when they develop the code. So again, we can prototype and we can test it on a small market of people to figure out the idea if it is worth to actually code, test, and deploy, or we just can shut down this idea and move on to another feature. And also, this story reminded me a situation with Steve Jobs, who tried to explain what kind of calculator he wants to his team and stressed his team out for months because the team couldn't get the specific idea out of his head, what kind of design and what functionality he actually wants. Until somebody with technical expertise created, I would call it like a pre-vibe coding prototype for Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs was able to prototype what he wants using the simple code. So to get the idea out of his head to show this to the developers. And then it took just a few weeks for his team to finally implement what he wanted them to do.
Precisely. I think at this point in time, vibe coding should be used for that. Can you take the code and use bits of it in your actual code and your repository and with all that process of creating the actual software? You can, obviously you can. What Aina and I are trying to say here is don't blindly trust it and push it to quote unquote production. Use it for prototyping, use it to understand, maybe use it as a soundboard as a developer to try different things, but the actual solution should still follow your coding standards, your um, deployment standards, your security review standards, all those things. So again, prototyping, not production.
100%. And as we already started talking about production and the product owner role involved here, and Gerard, just again to reiterate what you said, that it can save us weeks of work. Let's expand a little bit more on Agile environment and how it can help, as I already said, to resurrect Agile.
Yes. So this is an idea that you and I discussed some time ago, where Agile is experiencing a lot of issues because as a framework, it prescribes a very specific way of organizing and structuring work for software teams. The problem is that a lot of companies are trying to push pure Agile or specifically Scrum onto teams that are not set to work in that very dynamic but also flexible environment. If those teams still have to adhere to deadlines, if they still have to adhere to very rigid requirements and follow prescribe from the top way of building and delivering software, often it turns into just a waterfall approach that is painted over with Agile or Scrum brush, and they say, "Oh, I'm instead of doing waterfall, I'm doing Agile, but I have 7 sprints plan ahead." That's not really Agile, right? And it really comes from the fact that when there are prescribed requirements up front, people try to cheat the system, and then things don't really work. Teams are frustrated, project managers are frustrated. The product is actually not shipped any faster. And I think there is a lot of backlash against Agile frameworks, specifically Scrum. Well, how does vibe coding fix this? I wouldn't say it fixes it altogether, but it now, in my opinion, allows for uh, a slightly different approach where in the past, your typical Scrum cycle was sprint planning, then let's say 2 weeks sprint. And at the end of the 2 week sprint, you do product demo and a review with the product owner. And you basically show that person how much you developed, how many of the features were ready to be shipped. They review it, they provide feedback. Um, they might add more scope, they might change some things. Whatever that feedback is captured, and then that feedback can be turned into user stories on the next sprint planning session, right? Well, how about this? A product owner comes to the sprint planning session first, sits down with the team, takes the requirements, and does vibe coding with the team together before the sprint planning even starts. They generate a prototype together, and the product owner communicates through that prototype what is that is required from software to actually do. It communicates the front end or how the user interface might look like. So this is tremendously helpful for the designers on the team. It communicates the flow, what is the user's journey in that piece of software that is being produced. And it can communicate edge cases or like, I want to do this. And if a user fails at doing A, maybe they can do B. So you can go through those cycles on that effectively sprint planning meeting, and you can create a much better understanding of what is actually required and what the vision for that software is. Then the team can take this prototype and this entire discussion, turn it into actual user stories that more accurately reflect what the product owner actually wanted. And then at the end of the sprint, they do a demo of what is the actual solution based on that prototype. Again, prototype is being discarded. The developers develop the actual solution. But then the discussion is more about how closely do you match what I wanted from that prototype, rather than how closely are we in general with your vision for that software. You're basically taking the entire discussion and bringing it one layer in abstraction lower, where you're now discussing the actual implementation rather than the vision. In my opinion, this is going to help teams be much more aligned actually align, not just hype word align, actually align with the vision from the product owner, because they can communicate the requirements and visualize those requirements and kind of put them into work way before any software is actually developed. So in my opinion, this has opportunity to kind of revise the actual sprint cycle where the sprint planning is based on much clearer set of requirements that allows the team to be much more specific about the user stories that they would generate. And because they understand those user stories better now, in my opinion, it will be much easier for them to estimate them. So then the estimations will be more accurate. And that leads to a more accurate burn down chart. That leads to more accurate planning. So in my opinion, this has a tremendous opportunity to revive the kind of approach based on pure Scrum rather than writing down set of requirements and then trying to turn them into stories and massive backlog and pre-planning sprints ahead. I think it has an opportunity to kind of inject a little bit more life into Scrum as we know it.
Kind of like a reversed sprint. And
Mhm.
I also got a thought that if I'm a product owner and let's say I have three ideas on how to implement this feature, or like three ideas on how I envision this feature. So instead of just write dry user stories and then discuss it with my developers, I can quickly create three prototypes, so maybe even not in details, but at least to make it visual, and then discuss it with the developers, and they will give me more precise estimation, first of all, on how close they can implement. And is it possible to implement it in all of the three ways, which I am envisioning? Or maybe one of the ways is already impossible, so we just cut it down. And then to talk about the other two different ways. So is one way better than another, or is one way easier than another? Maybe it will take 1 month to build it in one way and just 2 weeks to build it in another way. So we can be faster to market, just 50% compared to if we just started working on the first way blindly without thinking about different other options.
Oh, 100%. I think the benefits of fast prototyping are undeniable. If you if we expand on what you just said, you're now moving from zero to a pre-MVP prototype that you can review in a closed beta with a small subset of users, right? And like I said at the beginning, in the past, to create that prototype, that still entire team had to develop that prototype, and then you put it in front of a bunch of users. The users will say, "No, I don't like it," and that entire, you know, 2 weeks or however it took, basically is scrapped. It's costly, right? In the past, I've seen some designers doing wireframe prototypes. I forgot the name of the tool right now, but there used to be a tool in which they could connect those images and kind of link them to create like a website effectively
Mhm.
of just images where users could just follow the flow and they could see if the users understand the interface and complete the tasks. But it was kind of a bit dumb because the wireframes were not true
Yes.
interface. The users could only do one or two things, and it kind of bogs them into a reviewing of very narrow use case. And that still took a lot of time to prepare all the wireframes, connect them all, create the entire scenario for user to go through and have that review. Well, now, you know, again, vibe coding, it might not be just say, build me an app. It's a little bit more involved than that. It does require a little bit preparation. It does require good prompt engineering to get what you want. But we're now talking hours instead of weeks. And you can create three prototypes, like you said, and you can create a closed private beta software review with a cohort for each of those prototypes. You can gather feedback. And based on that feedback, you can then move into the actual implementation much faster. And one, you didn't spend the time of the entire team to create that prototype. That prototype can be created by a single developer doing some vibe coding. Two, it didn't take weeks, it took hours, right? And three, the entire cost of doing this went not to zero because you have to pay for those tools, but we're talking hundreds of dollars instead of tens of thousands of dollars. So it is actually much cheaper to do all of this and it's much faster. So your feedback loop, instead of taking weeks, now can take quite literally days. So even within a span of one sprint, the team can vibe code a solution, do review with users, gather the feedback, even mid-sprint adjust their user stories. Maybe not necessarily good from a planning and story point perspective, but you can still make necessary adjustments and then deliver that actual revised version by the end of the sprint, rather than wait the entire sprint and then start doing reviews. So the feedback cycle is now tighter and can be much faster. If anything, that saves money and helps um, bringing the actual solution that you want to the market.
So I think Gerard and I just indirectly listed the benefits of using the tool, but I still believe that for many, our conversation is a little bit thought-provoking. So I have and ask for the audience who is listening to us right now, what are your thoughts about our conversation? And are you already implementing vibe coding? What do you think about it? Do you see the benefits? And do you use it for your personal benefit or for your team benefit? So please let us know in comments, Gerard, and I will be very happy to review and elaborate on that. But talking about the team, so Gerard, it was a good review on the tool, but do you use it for yourself, or are you using for your team, or you're planning to use it for your team? Do you have like any specific materials to show us today?
So I decided I really want to learn this, and I sign up for a hackathon organized by one of the mainstream tools for vibe coding. The website is called bolt.new. And I had this idea for a little app that I had for years now. But like you said, I'm a software developer, and I don't necessarily have the time to now acquire those skills to build. And even that, you still so much knowledge and so much experience to actually bring a product to the market. So I never pursued that idea. But with Bold.new, I decided that I want to learn how to do it properly, how to do it well, how to actually gain all of the benefits that we described. So I decided that I will use this idea for this little app and I will participate in this hackathon. So my general preparation for it was that I generated a product design document. It was more of an outline, and it just gave me the structure of what is necessary in the app. Things like what are the personas that are going to be important to develop this app? A general logged in user, an administrator, a super administrator, a user that is not logged in. So things of this matter. And then I use ChatGPT to help me turn this into a nice described set of features. I also use ChatGPT to help me generate some wireframes based on those descriptions so I could visualize my idea and the description of the features. Then I used another tool, manus.im. I find that that tool, even though it's a competitor to ChatGPT, it's a little bit better at doing research online, and it helped me research what are the best practices for prompt engineering for bold.new. Okay, because those are slightly different prompts because you're now generating software. And again, not a software engineer, so I didn't necessarily know all the things that need to go into that place. So I uploaded the product design document or outline. I uploaded all the wireframes, and I asked Manus, that IAM tool, to then generate me a set of prompts that I can then take to bold.new in order to turn that product design document into a working prototype. And I have to say that it worked beautifully. At least the prototype from a front end perspective, from zero to a functioning front end in 26 minutes.
Wow, that's impressive.
Obviously, there was time I spent before, with ChatGPT, but that was still a couple of hours, right? But at bold.new, from zero to a functioning prototype in 26 minutes.
I haven't expected that. I honestly, I've expected few hours, but we are talking minutes right now, which is mind blowing.
And mind you, I'm not a software developer.
Yes.
So if I was able to produce, again, not a working software prototype, but still, I can now take that prototype, go onto the sprint planning session, and I can work with the team, and we can click the buttons, we can review the user flow, and it is so much easier to then communicate what actually is needed and how it's going to work, what is going to be the user experience. That allows you to write a much better, much more detailed user stories, and you can specify the developer tasks much better because you already have something tangible to work with.
So now I am super excited to see what you've been able to build in just 26 minutes.
I think what we should do is probably another podcast where we will focus just on a demo and maybe kind of show everyone how to actually go about it. It does take a little bit of preparation, and there is context that is necessary to kind of present it well. So maybe we can do that on some other occasion.
So, dear listeners, it feels like we are going to meet up with Gerard again, and I hope very soon, because I am super excited to see this product.
I'll gladly show you this from my perspective. I'm sure actual developers who understand the good practices in software development, they will take that even further. They can take it to even higher levels, and they can actually build solutions with it in the future. But right now, I think all project managers should invest a little bit of time into this to understand how software development will work in the future, because I believe there is a future in this. But even at a much kind of lower level, can you take your user story and you put it into a tool, and the tool will output some prototype based on that user story? Does the output matches what your understanding of that user story is? If it does, awesome. If it doesn't, now you have a feedback loop, which you can use just to write better user stories.
And I agree on that people need to invest their time in learning that, because it's our very near future. So as soon as we start learning about it, as soon as we are able to influence the process and actually tailor it the way we want, rather than observe what other people are doing and how other people are pivoting us. And Gerard haven't asked me for that, but I know, Gerard, that you are having your course, I think, in the next few weeks. So I highly encourage everybody to visit it. And I am launching a few courses in September, but September is not this soon. So again, I highly recommend to attend Gerard's course first, and then explore it a little bit on your own. And maybe if you like our presentation, you can join me in September for my specific courses.
Well, thank you for that little plug. I do put together courses about AI for managers specifically. So if anyone is interested, feel free to join us. Thank you.
And I think on this note, we are going to close our podcast and make people wonder what prototype you've been able to make, Gerard, in just over 26 minutes. So, guys, stay tuned. We are going to meet up with you again very soon. And by now, Gerard, thank you so much again for keep coming to this podcast, to keep joining me, and to make all of us wonder about the future, and also think how can we be better in our jobs. Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me.